Howdy folks, are you just as perplexed with the plethora of new Photoshop tools as I am? And are you wondering whether the AI robot overlords are taking over any minute soon? Well, fret no more, because today's special guest is one of the best known and loved YouTube experts out there, and we're going to clear it all up for you right after this. Welcome to Camera Shake, where we bring you the insider scoop on all things photography and videography, giving you a unique opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. As always, I'm your host, Kirsten Nutz, and before we get into it, I've got one thing to ask of you. Because I've noticed that over 65% of our viewers on YouTube and listeners on audio are not actually subscribed to this channel. I mean, come on people, you can really help me out by hitting the subscribe button. It'll help me get even more amazing guests on the show. But as I realize every week, this probably won't even be possible. So, there you go. But, anyway, hit that button. Just do it. It'll help us out. It'll be fantastic. Thank you so much. It's just one click. That's all it takes. Now, without further ado, let's give it up for today's special guest, the Photoshop expert, Kelby 1 instructor, YouTube educator, and the man with the greatest hair in Photoshop by a country mile, Mr. PiXimperfect himself. Give it up for Unmesh Dinda. Unmesh, man, how's it going?
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the compliment. That was quite an intro.
Well, it's true, though. I mean, your hair is glorious, in every video.
I just hope that it keeps up with the years as I get older, but thank you.
Oh, man, you can pull off the gray. I'm pretty sure about that.
I hope so, too.
So, Unmesh, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I've been watching your videos, like many of our listeners and viewers out there, I'm sure, but I've been watching your videos for years, literally years. And so I feel like I've sort of grown with your background, over the years. How long have you been doing this?
Photoshop or just doing videos?
Yeah, doing your instructional PiXimperfect videos.
So again, I'll start with Photoshop. I started with Photoshop when I was just 8 years old. My father introduced me to it. And I started teaching Photoshop. It's been 7 years with PiXimperfect. So that's been quite a while.
Wow. I mean, that in itself is insane, because I feel like, I've been watching your videos, I'm pretty sure for, at least 5 or 6 years minimum, probably possibly the whole 7. But tell you what, we're going to come back into your beginnings in Photoshop in a little while, because I know that everybody's talking about at the moment out there is AI, basically Photoshop AI tools, generative fill. Lightroom has just, friends at Adobe have just announced new Lightroom tools as well, which, for those of you who are watching and listening, I did a little episode about that last week. Now, where is this AI thing going? What do you think?
It is very unpredictable, to be honest, and I don't know where this is going. What I know definitely is AI is coming from all directions, and Adobe is just trying to keep up with the competition. That is all. Now, generative AI, Adobe is not the first company to do it. Now, there has been several companies before it. One of the first that really broke the internet was Midjourney. So I made a video about Midjourney, and during that time, Adobe did not have anything of generative AI or anything, I think, planned, at least to the public. And then they came out with it. So whatever AI tools we see it in Adobe, they're just doing it, just at least trying to do it the legal way, the right way, which has already come before. So Adobe is just following what is coming on. And where this goes, this is completely crazy, because right now you can use AI to do almost anything. Now, I'm sure that in the future, certain Photoshop processes can also become automated as well. Now, again, it is not just limited to Photoshop. There are also several AI plugins. For example, I use AI plugins for retouching. Things that used to take, for example, 2 to 3 hours just to retouch that, just to dodge and burn those little ups and downs of the skin. There are AI plugins that can automatically do it for you. So it's just very impossible to predict where this is going. And to a lot of people, I do understand that this can get scary as well.
And that's the thing, because I think people generally fall into two camps, either the adopters, who are like, yeah, AI is the future, is awesome, let's go. And then you have the other camp, if you want, people who are maybe a little bit afraid of it. Do you think AI has caused as much of an uproar as maybe the introduction of Photoshop in the first place?
I was in one of the Photoshop discussions in a few, maybe last Max, and they were discussing new features. And the talk was that after layers, so when layers were introduced in Photoshop, it was one of the biggest revolutions in image editing, right? Now, AI is such an introduction that has outdone layers in Photoshop. Layers was probably introduced more than decades ago, probably. I'm not sure when. But I think when generative AI was introduced, that people said that after layers, this is the biggest change that Photoshop has ever brought. So, yeah, it's been insane.
I mean, layers was no doubt an incredible advancement, and actually I think just a really great mental leap. Although you look back at these things, you think, well, this makes perfect sense. Why hasn't anybody thought about this earlier, right? In retrospect. But
absolutely.
For the time, I thought it was a great mental leap. And, I have to say, I mean, even when I started with Photoshop, which I can't even remember what that was. It was like before it was the Creative Suite, so it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But they already had layers. I'm pretty sure they already had layers at the time. So, but at least the introduction of layers wasn't as controversial. It wasn't like people having like really strong opinions about it.
Right.
It's like, no way, you cannot use layers. That's now you're faking it. If you use layers, man, what you doing?
Then again, we did have the conversation of for a long time before generative AI. We did have the conversation. A lot of photographers used to say, "I'm a photographer. I don't use Photoshop." So there was always this conversation around Photoshop in image competitions, in photography exhibitions. Like, if somebody has used Photoshop, people would look down upon that person, usually in a lot of situations. So I think the same has come around with AI. It's always going to be coming around, I think. I'm not sure. I'm not that old to know this, but I'm sure a similar amount of resistance might have come when we switched to digital from film. So there's always going to be this uproar. But I think AI, a lot of the reason why AI is being debated is because of what is AI being trained on. That is what people are, controversial about. Because if the AI was trained on something that it was not allowed to, for example, somebody's works or somebody's copyrighted work, and I'm creating something with that style, would that be stealing or would that not be stealing? I don't know. When a human trains on something, let's say I'm learning art, and I'm learning on the arts of people that other people have created. I'm learning on Picasso, I'm learning on Leonardo da Vinci, I'm learning on lots of these masters, or these are old works, but I'm learning on the recent artists as well. And inspired by them, if I create something, it's all right. But if the AI trains on that and AI creates something, it's not all right. So it's again a discussion, a debate that there is no answer for it. I don't know what is right or what is wrong. It is just a debate. But then again, it sometimes seems not right. And that's what Adobe is trying to do, is that they're trying to train their AI on licensed stock photos that they own the rights to, so that it is, commercially usable.
So that's an interesting thing, because you mentioned that a minute ago that Adobe are trying to stay legal almost. So rather than just trailing the internet and basically doing a Google search for a particular image, like, I don't know, cat on a skateboard or something, and then creating lots of cats based on images of cats that, AI finds on the interwebs. The source of those images, you're saying, is basically based entirely on Adobe's own back catalog?
Yes. So from what they have in their FAQs, if you look at it, Adobe Firefly AI model is trained on their own stock catalog. Adobe stock catalog, plus I think some things that are public, available to the public, things that are, what do you call it? the ones that you can use. I'm not sure what the term is. The things that are not copyrighted, stuff of that nature. Yeah.
Like copyright-free stock photo sites or something?
Not copyright-free, things that have, things that are in the, I know the term, public domain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so, I mean, that in itself, I guess, that can give some comfort to people.
That is kind of a comfort, but it also hampers the AI in another way. For example, and it's a good thing that, for example, if you go to Adobe Firefly website and if you type in Mickey Mouse wearing a blue shirt, it wouldn't generate anything close because it doesn't know what Mickey Mouse is. It was not trained on Mickey Mouse. It just doesn't have that in their library because Mickey Mouse is copyrighted. But if you go to Midjourney and type that, it will just generate a clean shot, hyper-realistic image of Mickey Mouse, the most amazing that you have seen. So that is the difference between something like Midjourney and Adobe Firefly. And again, it just is the amount of data that you have trained on. Sometimes, and actually most of the times, if you look at Midjourney, it definitely creates much crisper, highly detailed, much more realistic results than Adobe Firefly. But then again, you also have to look at the amount of things that it has been trained on without any restrictions, whereas Adobe has been trained on their own little data set.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, I think just the pure fact that we're talking about a technology being trained on something, as opposed to like, we've written an algorithm and now all of a sudden it can blur skin, right? Which in a sense, it's a completely different approach.
It is crazy. The reason why I say that, because 3 or 4 years ago, I used to do a class and I used to teach something like, let's say, sharpening. All right. And if you missed focus in a particular area, I would say that what sharpening does in photography and digital imaging is that it adds contrast along the edges. And it tries to create an illusion that the image is sharp, and it doesn't create the details. And I explained it. Your computer can never create details. You can only create the illusion of sharpening. Or if you have lost details in some place, you have to, get the details from some other image and paste it there and try to match it, like we usually do in Photoshop. The image, Photoshop cannot create the details. It doesn't know what was there. But I was proven wrong, flabbergasted, and it was thrown all over the place when generative AI was released. Let's say if we had to remove something, replace something, or change something in our image, all we had was the clone stamp tool or the patch tool or stuff like that. We had other images that we took reference from, copied different parts, but now we have this amazing tool that generates something of its own, and that is just thinking about it, just the thought of it is insane.
Yeah, and it's very similar to upscaling imagery, for example.
Right.
I used to say this, it's like, well, if you don't have any more pixels, you can't just pull them out of thin air. Well, turns out
exactly. You can right now. It is insane. I used to say the same about upscaling now that you say it. Right.
It's a crazy thing. Now, one of the, I think one of the most sort of more acute discussions that I come across, especially in the world of like photo competitions, for example, is this whole thing in conjunction with generative AI, where basically, where people are not really very clear on, what happens when you use generative AI, because let's say you erase a thing. Like I did a thing where I had, a car and it was decals on the side and I erased the decals, right? I just replaced them with just plain paintwork.
Cars. Okay.
Yeah. Simple thing. I mean, it would have been absolutely possible in Photoshop before. Obviously, it would have been relatively easy to do, but it would have taken a little bit of time, like a minute or two, right? Now, it takes absolutely zero time, and the results are pretty phenomenal. And the difference being that previously I would have cloned things in, let's say, from another part of the image. So if I was the photographer, then since I would have taken the original image, I would have now reused other pixels that I had already created in a sense. So even though I'm copying stuff over, I'm still the original author of that part of the image, if that makes any sense.
Right.
The discussion with AI and generative fill is now that, well, but now AI just makes stuff up. So it fills that area in with stuff that you didn't shoot as a photographer. So now that part of the image isn't actually your own, and therefore you can now not enter it into a photo competition, since the definition is all the parts of the image had to have been generated by the photographer. And it's like, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, yeah, but the end result's exactly the same. I mean, it looks exactly the same. Like, what? I mean,
it's a critical thing to think about. And it's insane because when you use generative fill, it also looks at your image and looks for reference. It is not that it takes something else and just pastes it there. It just uses your image so that it matches perfectly. So I don't know what to think about it, because there are other tools too. For example, if you use something like the remove tool that is new to Photoshop, it also uses AI. But then again, it doesn't generate something of its own. It takes things from your image and tries to do it. So it is all about, where do we draw the line? That is the whole crux of the thing, because what sort of AI are you allowed to use? And it just is insane.
It's getting insanely complicated, you know. My wife always calls it the fluffy bit. You know, it's like whenever something changes and people get all, you know, up in arms about it, and, you know, and there's still a discussion and argument or whatever. It's just a fluffy bit until people get used to it. I mean, I'm imagining it'd be the same as when, you know, Photoshop first came around and people went like, well, hang on, but no, you can't do that because you can't do that in a dark room. We've never been able to do this before. So now that's not photography, is what I hear all the time.
That's not photography, yeah. But this AI feels a bit different because it is generating something of its own. Up until now, whatever we did, it was not generating something of its own. This is a different beast. Like even what we were doing in Photoshop, that was meticulously done by us by hand. That was kind of a digital art that we were creating. Even if we were modifying something, we took the effort to do it. But now that we are using AI, it is creating something on its own. The machine is creating something on its own. And that's where the difference comes into place. And I really don't know what to think about it. Really don't know how the ownership goes. But I do know the technicalities of it. So you said you replaced that little area of your car. So what happens is now when you export that image from Photoshop, some content credentials will be added to it. It will be tagged that AI was used in this photo. So when you next open that exported image somewhere else, even in Photoshop or other places, it will have that tag that says that you have used AI in this photo.
Even on Instagram, I see recently. So now if you upload an image to Instagram, it will now have a little tag that says created with AI, even though not really. It's just that I erased a sticker on the side of the car or something. You know?
Right. And again, it's not something that, you cannot remove. Like just take a screenshot or just select the whole image and paste it in a new document and it goes away. It's not that it's a foolproof solution that Adobe has come up with, but, the ownership is kind of a gray area with that.
So there's a flip side of that. And that's coming from the purely creative point of view. So I wonder if you agree with me on this. So I always think that if I just look at AI as yet another tool, a really powerful tool, and one that apparently needs to be trained a little bit like my dog for some reason, so it can do a trick or two, nevertheless, a really extremely powerful tool. What it does do creatively is it allows me to convert what's in my head and turn that into a tangible image on the screen. And it allows me to do that quicker and better and faster than ever before. So it's like, from a creative perspective entirely, it's like a magic wand.
It is. And I believe that AI should be used as a tool. And I know this has been said before again and again. People say that this AI will replace you. But this has been said too, that AI will not replace you. It is the people that use AI will definitely replace you. So you have to, again, I believe that it's important that we don't ignore things. We can stick to our own style. If you shoot film, that's fine. Absolutely. Continue to shoot film. You create your own style that has its own characteristic to it, and that is uniquely yours. But it's also important that we don't ignore what is going on and what is happening in the industry, what is happening in technology, digital imaging, so that we don't stay ignorant to what is happening. So AI definitely should be used as a tool. But again, it has two sides to it. So I do understand that it can get pretty confusing. But when you do use it and you forget about all the legalities of it, forget about whether it's your creation or somebody else's creation, you can just create some pretty awesome stuff with it. Whether it's moral, ethical or not, that if you just keep that aside for a moment, it just is an incredible tool for you to create whatever you have in your mind. But then this raises another question, which a lot of artists are upset about. I'll tell you what this is and we can discuss this, and I would need your input on this. Let's say you learned how to create illustrations in Photoshop. You took years and years of training. You used a Wacom tablet. You created some of the most amazing digital paintings and digital art, right? You did that. You learned your mastery. It took years and years for you to build an audience and do all that. Now AI comes, and somebody who just knows how to type a few prompts can create something equally or better work without all the training that you did. So where do you put this? And that is where artists really feel bad about it. So I don't know what to think of it.
Hey, let me just jump in real quick to tell you about the amazing sponsor of this episode, Platypod. Platypod offers innovative camera support systems designed to unleash your creativity. With their stable, versatile, and portable solutions, you can capture stunning shots like never before. And I'm not just saying that. As the host of the Camera Shake podcast, I can personally vouch for Platypod's incredible products. They've become an integral part of the show. In fact, I'm surrounded by various Platypod products holding up lights, cameras, microphones, and so on. It's really helped to transform the way I make the show and the way I shoot at home, in the studio, and on location. But don't just take my word for it. Explore Platypod's website at www.platypod.com to discover their range of products, including the Platypod Extreme, Platypod tripod heads, and the brand new handle, of course. Make sure to follow Platypod on Instagram and Facebook at Platypod Tripods for exclusive updates, tips, and giveaways. By choosing Platypod, you're not only investing in your photography, but you're also supporting the Camera Shake Photography Podcast. Thanks again to Platypod, our amazing sponsor. Platypod, where innovation never sleeps. It's a difficult thing, and I think, that is a common problem that many artists across all different types of art, whether that may be music or, or digital art or painting or whatever, are sort of exposed to. I think it's because the thing is, to the artist, the art is not only the output, it's also the input, the years of honing your craft, the practicing, the getting better. The feeling that, you get better over time. Like this whole thing, the devotion to it, the application, like the time, the 1,000, what did they say, 10,000 hours or whatever it is. You just you become an expert. And I know this as a guitarist. In a former life, I was a session musician. It's the hours I sweated over the guitar when I was a kid. I mean, days and months and years. Exactly. And the feeling of oh wow, I can play this now, when only a week ago there was no chance in hell that I could ever play this riff or this guitar solo or whatever. There's this thing where you get a sense of self-improvement and stuff like that. The sense that if you focus yourself, you focus your attention, you conjure up this discipline that it takes to get good at something. I think this is a really important part for artists, to feel that. And it's, and I know this as a parent as well. This is why I'm trying to convey to my children, that it's important to apply yourself and to have that discipline, because that's the way you get good at something, whatever it may be. Even if you just want to learn how to drive a car, if you want to become good at driving a car, you just have to go out and drive a car. I mean, for hours and hours and hours and years and whatever, and you get good at it. And I feel that the disappointment from the artist's point of view is often that, well, that's not fair. Like, I spent 10 years practicing this. Now somebody comes along, presses a button.
Somebody comes along, types a few words, and now he creates something that I couldn't have ever created. That is just insane. Yeah. That is not fair.
I know.
And that's where the issue comes. Now, if I'm using it as a tool, as a photographer to remove a person from a group photo, that's fine. Nobody cares. I mean, that's all right. I would have done it either way. But when you're using to create something that took me years and years and years of training, and that is an artistic ability, that is where the problem comes. That is where artists are not feeling great about it.
Yeah, and the one thing I think about this a lot, and again, I'm just coming purely from a creative perspective.
Right.
What we do as artists when we train our skill, when we practice our skill, and again, this may be drawing skills, or our digital skills, as in using Photoshop, or maybe playing the guitar or an instrument or whatever. As much as we're training that, we're also honing our creative skill, our creative mind. And that is really something that I think very, very, very few people are really, truly born with that superior creative mind. For the vast, vast, vast majority of artists out there, it is a thing that, again, takes a lifetime of devotion. And I don't think you can replace that with AI, that creative thought. Like you can create something with AI, an image, but you still have to have that critical eye that looks at it and goes, no, that's not good, or I want to change that, or it.
So when you look at AI, when I have, again, all of us, have you used ChatGPT to write something?
Yeah, all the time.
We all do. Now, I do write emails with my own style. Whenever I have to write to something or write a beautiful email to somebody, a beautiful message to somebody, if I have AI write it, to be honest, most of the time, I feel like it's not me. I mean, it's not uniquely me. It may write as beautifully as it could. It sometimes may be wordy. I have to go back to the AI, hey, this is too wordy, or hey, don't use that word. And by the time I have done all the explaining, I feel like I should have written this just myself. And it just doesn't have, again, people say that AI work has no soul, but I will say this. This is for sure, and this is for a fact that it wouldn't have your unique soul. And that is for sure. Whatever you create with AI, it just wouldn't have that something uniquely yours. Now, if you're creating something, let's say, image-wise in Photoshop, yes, you can generate a few things with AI. If you type in, all right, generate this area with this, put a car here, or put something there. It will put something there, and it may put something there that's very pretty, but it wouldn't be exactly how you wanted, exactly to the pixels. You wanted windows a certain shape, and you wanted the door a certain shape. You wanted that exact shape. You have to create it. The AI wouldn't be able to absolutely translate what is on your mind. Maybe someday it will. But either way, like you said, AI may be in some way promoting you from someone who does the drawings on the screen to more of a director who tells what your vision is, and the AI does the work for you. It's still uniquely yours, but you're the one directing it.
This is the thing I love about the three different options that you get when you use generative fill,
Right.
And I mean, it literally gives you three options, and you, as a director, like you said, you just go through and you go, I like this one, or don't like that one, or I don't like any of them, and I have to just click the button one more time, and it'll give me three more options.
Yes, that is the thing. And the other thing you said about there is a value to the hours that you put in. There is a value to the art that you create. And I try to relate it with the things that we have in our lives, the material, artistic things that we have, or the gadgets that we have. So recently, I've been into watches a little bit. I like watches. I look at watches. I collect a few. So that has been a thing. Now, if you look at watches, they can be 300,000, 400,000. And the reason, again, a lot of it sometimes can be hype. But if you look at some good watches that are really, really expensive, it is expensive because mostly it is because of the hours that people have put into it. And some of these watches people have spent like a year or two just to create that one watch. And it has so many complications, so many mechanics and it's just a piece of engineering that is just incredible, how it can do so much without any electricity. I'm talking about a mechanical watch. How it can do so much, how it can also show the time, how it can also show the date, or maybe it has a perpetual calendar, maybe it has a moon phase. I mean, so many different features, and it's all doing that with metal cogs and wheels. It's just a piece of art. And sometimes they're hand assembled, it takes years to build it, and that is why there is a price to it. On the other hand, you look at some digital watches, run-of-the-mill watches, that can be generated automatically with a machine, and those are priced at $10 or $20 or even $30, something of that range. So you see the gap, you appreciate the art. So there's always going to be a niche value for it. There's always going to be, of course, anybody can get a digital watch and tell the time, it's fantastic, but the art is always appreciated, and it has a higher price for it, and it has a value of it. So I feel there is value, as long as, again, in the early days, people are going to create something in AI and call that art. That is a different thing. But I do believe that there is definitely a lot of value in something created with hand.
And, you can absolutely use that example. And I think watches are a beautiful example, because you can use the exact same line of thinking when it comes to photography. Cameras, for example. You look at old camera. In fact, I have an example. Hang on. I have a brand new example to my collection right here that really depicts exactly what you just said. This is a really old camera. Well, actually, it's not really that old, but it is pretty old. But it's totally mechanical. Like this thing, it has a crank. I mean, you crank the thing out. Unbelievable. When you open this up, there's zero electronics in this. It's all mechanical. It's basically little cog wheels, and it's unbelievably complicated. It's just so, it's unbelievable. In a weird way, it's both a matter of simplicity, using this and shooting film and all the stuff that we have to do with film, So in some ways, it's so much simpler than digital photography. It's kind of back to the basics, but in another way, it's also a lot more complicated, because when you open this, if I open this up, I understand nothing. Zero that's going on in here. I mean, it looks like a watch. Is that complicated?
Right.
If I open up my Nikon, well, it's just a bunch of circuit boards, and there we are. It's a completely different thing. You
cannot look at the science of it. It's all just computer. That is all there is to it. But if you open up this camera, you can see how the light travels. You can see how the image is captured on the film. And you can really make out, like the way we studied physics in high school, the lesson on the light, we learned how a camera works, and we learned on a model like this when we looked at different diagrams of camera. Yeah. But now if you open cameras, it's a completely different thing. It works on the same principle, but it's all computers inside.
Exactly. I mean, that's just what I always say to my clients, or when I'm teaching, a lighting workshop or something. So basically, we're shooting with a computer. That's what it is. It's a computer. It turns light into an image, basically. Because people often go, like, oh yeah, how do you feel about shooting with your iPhone, for instance? I'm like, I feel really good about it. It's just another computer. I mean, it's just
It is. And these days when I travel, I carry my iPhone and not the camera, because if I do, the travel becomes work. And now I have 3,000 raw photos that I have to edit to post. Whereas if I were to capture that on my phone, I'm ready to go. And if it was captured on a camera, things will never get posted. And for me, it's important that things get posted on social media.
Exactly. I mean, how does the sort of advancement of AI, do you think, how is that going to impact on what you do teaching Photoshop on your channel?
In a way, things are changing. The way we edit photo is changing drastically. Earlier, I would have taught something. I would say that there are just updates. There are just different ways you would do things. And it is my duty to keep the audience updated on the optimal ways, on the best ways of using certain new technologies, and also teach the older technology so that they're well versed. If they don't want to use AI, if they wanted to use it manually, they know it all. So there are little updates when it comes to it. Actually, there are huge updates that people should know about. For example, now this has not gotten better. This is still, I would say, kind of not as good. But for example, if you look at compositing, when we place a subject on a new background, we also have to create the shadow of the subject, right? Now, right at the moment, if we already have the old shadow from the old picture and it is clean, we can extract it. That is fine. But if it's, let's say, a complicated shadow, maybe on a grass or the ground is not level, and we bring that subject onto a new background, we have to create that shadow from scratch. We have to paint that shadow. But what if once we bring the subject, we match the lighting, we match the color, we just select that area, right, where there needs to be a shadow, and just type in shadow with AI, it will create that shadow for you. So little changes like that with compositing. But then again, this is not perfect yet. It works for some objects. It doesn't work for some objects. Right now, if I try to do that, if there's a human feet in there, it will just mess it up. It may create 15 fingers. I don't know. Weird things it will create. But you have to watch out for little things like that. And that is the way editing is going to change. For example, also in product photography. Sometimes you have to generate different backgrounds for the product. And just even finding a background that matches the lighting, even if you're looking at Adobe stock or licensed photos, it just is a hell lot of work. But when you generate the background with AI, most of the images that you generate already have the lighting matched. If the lighting on the product is harsh, it will generate a background with a harsh light. If the lighting is coming from a specific direction, it will match that. If it has harsh shadows, it will match that. It will also create the shadow for the product. It is just insane. So let's say you shot a photo of a shoe product. You want, in the background, you want some sand. In the background, you want some maybe ice. So you can really, really get creative with this. The thing that AI does is that it just begins to give you so many options. I recently made a video on 20 ways you can apply generative fill. And I mean, still, that is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many applications. It is just changing the way we edit photos in Photoshop. Right now, of course, the only limitation with AI is the resolution. So even now, in the regular version of Photoshop, I'm not talking about the beta, this is the limitation. Again, this is the only limitation that stops you from using it if you have to use larger areas of AI in professional work. And that is, still creates 1024 by 1024 maximum resolution. And that is quite a bummer.
Do you think that's going to change at any time?
It is changing. From what I have heard, I'm not sure about this. So Adobe is releasing Firefly Model 3. It's in beta right now, and you can use it. You can try it out in beta. It is not perfect. Sometimes it generates, I would like to call it modern art. Some weird stuff. It's just AI garbage. But it is still developing. It is in the beta mode. They're testing it out. But the rumor is that its resolution is going to be double that of what the current resolution is, probably 2000 by 2000, somewhere around that number. Also, I created a plugin. Again, it's a free feature inside the plugin. It's called PiXimperfect Compositing Plugin. What it does is that if you're trying to generate, let's say, an area this big, and if you use the plugin, what it does is it breaks it down into little chunks, and it automatically generates each piece one by one with one click of a button. Does it make sense?
Sure, yeah.
So if you select a big area and if you hit generate, what it will do, it will generate small pieces one at a time so that the resolution stays the highest. So it can create boxes of 1000 by 1000 pixels so that it always remains high resolution. But it's not a perfect solution. It is just something until the resolution of the AI increases.
So is that generally is that held back or dictated by Adobe's server power, or what is the limiting factor there?
One of the things is that, definitely. But also, I think it depends upon the things that it has been trained on, the resolution of the image that it has been trained on. I think that is a matter as well. From what I have seen with other AIs and the talks that I've had, I feel that when you train an AI, if you just feed higher resolution photos, it can take a long time, maybe. It's just hard to imagine. maybe, again, you need to talk to an AI engineer for it. Maybe it has been trained on lower resolution images, and then maybe the AI can later be trained on how do we upscale it rather than training on super high resolution images. But then if we talk about resolution, let's not just limit it to AI. There has been other AI programs as well, like Magnific. Have you heard of Magnific?
I haven't actually heard of Magnific, no.
So you should really look into Magnific. I made a video about it actually, and it's just getting viral loads of attention. Magnific is one of the AI platforms that upscales photos, but using AI, but in a creative way. It actually creates the details. It generates the little details inside of it, and it makes AI photos very, very extremely realistic. So even if you have a very low resolution photo, like 500 by 500 pixels, you can turn it into 5,000 by 5,000 pixels with Magnific AI. So let's say you have in digital imaging, let's say you have an image which has, hypothetically, let's say it has 5 pixels. Let's say you enlarge it and now it has 100 pixels. How is it going to fill up those missing areas, missing pixels? It's going to take mostly an average, right? And it's going to use different technologies to do it, and it's going to look blurred or messed up. But with Magnific, it tries to generate those areas with AI, and sometimes you can type in like, what is the style of it? Do you want it to be realistic? And it tries to use a mix of AI and the image, and it generates something just incredible out of this world. Definitely worth a try.
Do you have any special access to, Adobe or planning next, or do you have to just put a ton of research into all of those topics?
So there are, again, many parts to it. Definitely, I work with Adobe when it comes to feedback on what is going on and what may come. So that is there. And a lot of it is under NDA. That's one thing. But AI developments are not only happening in Photoshop, but also outside of Photoshop, because inside of Photoshop, see, Adobe is a big company. And before they take any step, they have to go through a lot of, hoops just to make sure that this is right, this is legal, this is going to work out, and this is going to work right. But with other companies, other smaller AI companies, there is not much of a restriction. They can just scan up the internet. And that gives us the freedom to create whatever they want really, really fast. So I think a lot of AI developments, most of it are happening outside of Adobe because they don't have any restrictions. They're not a big company. One of the AI that I recently reviewed is Styler.ai. And it was crazy because it can take a drawing and turn that into a real photo. It can just stay exactly the same. You can just have the drawing in a certain way. And then, for example, you drew a picture of a house and it will retain the same shape and it will just create that in 3D. It is just on a different level.
Now, I think I saw something recently
with Adobe.
I think I saw something very similar where they've taken all the characters out of The Simpsons and turned them into real life characters. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have seen that. And I think they did it. I don't know how they did it with the thing that you saw, but it can also be done in Midjourney. But what I'm talking about is it already was trained on Simpsons, right? But what if you create something of your own? What if you drew something of your own and you want to turn it into a real image? So that was already there in other AI platforms, not just Styler, but many other AI platforms. But recently it also came to Photoshop with the structure reference. Not Photoshop, I'm sorry, Adobe Firefly. So if you right now go to Adobe Firefly website, and I did a video about it. So I had my mom, by the way, both my parents are artists, they draw on canvas. So I had my mom doodle some jewelry on a piece of paper. So I took a picture of that, uploaded it, and then just typed in jewelry, used that image as a reference, the doodles that my mom created. And it was not the best work. It's still in beta. It creates some gibberish here and there. But even with that, it created that exact jewelry in real life. So that is just, you were talking about how great a tool AI can be. And just imagine how useful this can be for things like storyboarding, how useful this can be for things like, you skip a step. Earlier, you had to create layouts for, let's say you were creating comics. You had to create layouts, and then you were to bring in it to Illustrator, and then you were to do it in vector, take the painful time to do it, fill the colors. But the AI is not perfect yet, but there will be a time you can just directly take the layout and have it ready on the other end directly with AI. So, it's a great tool. But again, if you keep all the debates and the moral stuff and the legalities aside and the ethics aside.
It's one of these things. It's a complete minefield. I mean, on one hand, I'm thinking, like you said, storyboarding, fantastic. On the other hand, storyboard artists probably out of a job. Take an example like, the recent, what was it? The recent court trial thing in the US, right? Mm. So you have artists drawing whatever is going on inside of the court because they're not allowing cameras. Now, you could take that drawing and turn it into a real life thing. And then, of course, you create a situation where you're like, well, is that real or is it not real? You potentially get yourself into some dicey situations with it, I guess.
As you talked about, how is this future going? I'm seeing this very important change. As somebody who posts on YouTube, I think you would notice it as well. So when you do upload a video on YouTube, you would notice that these days there is a check mark that whether there's AI used in this video. So if you check that, you will see an AI label, because recently there had been a horde of channels that created videos, just spammed YouTube with videos created with AI. So for us creators, like you took the time to do this interview, you took the time to edit the video, you took the time to, have so much knowledge so that we could talk about it. So, and then there is somebody who is just auto-generating videos with AI, and it just doesn't seem fair. So where this world is going with Instagram, YouTube, and all of the social media platforms is that now they're introducing this tag that tells people that this is AI. Because even I, as a human being, we are really looking for human content. I really want to see human content. Sometimes we really strive for that. It just other things you would notice in that, and I wouldn't take names right now because I can get in trouble because of that. If you go to stock photo platforms and if you search for something, it just hurts me, and I don't like this because I'm going to a stock website. I'm going to spend my money to buy some licensed photos, and when I search for something, the first 10 results are AI generated. If they're AI generated, I would have just generated it myself in Midjourney. Why would I look for it in a stock photo website? So that just hurts. Yeah. So I think it is. We are also going into a world, and I have this feeling, where there will be actually a higher value for genuine human content, because there is a chance that people are going to be tired with all the AI stuff.
And now, of course, I mean, that's a high possibility because, of course, we've already seen that in, let's say, in the Industrial Revolution, where, we don't pay as much for shoes that have been made in a factory where they make the same type of shoes 10,000 times a day compared to, a handcrafted shoe that was made by an 80-year-old cobbler in Italy who's been doing this for 10 generations. Although from a technical point of view, that handmade shoe might actually be inferior in terms of, quality and, longevity and whatever else to the thing that was made by a machine that can actually make things maybe better, But still, that handmade label, that's really what we're paying for. And you could be absolutely right. Actually, there could be a future in human-generated, what should we call that? HI. Human intelligence.
That is the first time I've heard this, and you should really copyright this term. HI. I really like that, and there will be a term for it in the future, definitely, because with the crowdedness of the AI that is coming along, I'm definitely, again, when you scroll on Instagram, you would see videos created with AI with certain type of voiceovers that is kind of a text-to-speech created with AI, time and again. And it just bothers the hell out of me, and I don't like that kind of content. I really would prefer some human talking to the camera, or some human content, definitely, that has value, for sure. And just as you talked about the shoe example, I agree. We are kind of inclining towards it, even though it would be more convenient to just use the regular shoe created in a factory, but it has value. If you hand create it, it does have value. It does have a price.
That's again, come back to the manual mechanical camera example. The thing I think, the thing I value about things like this is the fact that, somebody had to actually sit there and put this together, like by hand. Do you know what I mean? I mean, this is like, it's incredibly complicated. And there was a degree of expertise, and craftsmanship that was involved in making this thing. Whilst I often feel like with, the latest, fill this blank space in with any major camera brand, camera that's really, it's a dude sitting in front of a computer designing things on CAD, and that's pretty much that.
Right.
And it just gets printed out, and the other side of the machine spits out a brand new whatever model camera it is. So it just feels like there isn't as much, I don't know, as much skill involved in it. We've talked about this earlier. I mean,
I agree. Think of it like I'm sorry to cut you off. You were saying something?
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I was just saying, think of it like somebody creating a painting. Now, I've grown in that environment, so I know this, that if you look at a painting, every stroke has been meticulously made. Every stroke has been thoughtfully created. And the artist has taken days or even months to kind of plan it out, kind of lay out. I've seen my parents lay out paintings several times, 10 times, 20 times. And once they finalize something, they do it on the big canvas. And even then, there's a lot of planning that goes on. And there's a lot of idea selection that goes on. They have to sometimes travel to get inspiration for ideas. And if you just look at a painting that an artist spent a few months to create with every single brushstroke, and you take, on the other side, you have something that was just prompted and somebody typed in a prompt and generated it. There is a huge gap in the value of both of those things. Like, you cannot just compete with that. You wouldn't be hanging AI art on your wall if given the choice of having an AI art or a hand-painted painting, because it has value unless you're somebody who likes that. But then, things like that have value, and that is why museums have it, because they have value.
Yeah.
But what can I say? I mean, in the future, it's unpredictable. I cannot even say anything right now because you never know.
Yeah. Right. So now that we've sort of hacked the future or not, let's go a little bit into the past. You mentioned earlier that both of your parents were artists or painters. Take me back to your beginnings in Photoshop. How did you sort of get into Photoshop? How did you get started on this journey?
So I was around 8 years old, and my father was, again, as you know, this is the harsh truth reality of things. Even without AI, it was difficult to make a living as an artist. So both my parents were artists, and they have been so for 40 years now. But then they were artists. They used to do that. They used to do their exhibitions. They used to do their art camps and all of that stuff. But the income wasn't enough to run a household. So my father had a main job as well. So he worked in a chemical laboratory, something in a steel company, something like that. So what happened was the job was kind of in danger, and there was a chance that he might lose the job. So he was looking for alternatives. Since he was already an artist, he thought of looking into that art avenue, and he wanted to get into desktop publishing. So it was kind of a thing back in the day, DTP. So he joined a class to learn desktop publishing, and we didn't have a computer back then. And just because he joined that class, we bought our family's first computer. And he introduced me to Photoshop. I still remember it was Photoshop version 6, not even CS. I think it was version 6, something like that, 6 or 7. He introduced me to it. And it just started from there. It just started like a game. He told me, all right, this is Photoshop. This is what it is. This is the interface. That's it. After that, whatever I learned was through trial and error. What this button does, what that button does. Sometimes he would guide me here and there, what this menu does. And then I would start playing with my family's photos. I would take our vacation photos, change the heads of people, change the heads of my uncle, and changed it with my cousin, and do all sorts of weird stuff. And I would make the heads bigger, smaller, turn their skin green, red, turn them into Shrek, and all sorts of fun stuff. So it all started right there, and it was all fun and games. And I used to use Photoshop like a game. And then in my, so I had kind of learned how to work with Photoshop. And in my, when I got into college, I actually have a degree in advertising, mass communication and advertising. So I got into college for that. And one of the semesters had Photoshop as a subject. So a lot of people, a lot of my classmates were having issues trying to figure that out. So I used to, help some of them and try to teach them. And then I also started making videos because learning Photoshop was very difficult for me. Back then, I didn't have access to internet. And even when I did, it was very expensive. So I don't know how it was where you lived, but where I lived, internet was like you had to pay around $5 for 1 GB of data, so on mobile data. So I had to think before clicking on a YouTube video whether I should watch it or not. Recently, everything has become unlimited, but back then it wasn't. So it was very hard for me to learn Photoshop and trying to figure that out. My only sources were trial and error, and the other source was I had a thick book called the Photoshop Bible, and those were, again, very old books. Some of the features were not even applicable then. So anyway, I did find a way to learn Photoshop, and then I kind of promised that anyone who is trying to learn Photoshop, they shouldn't have this difficulty. So I started making free videos on YouTube around my second year in college, and it's been 7 years since.
It's really amazing to see your sort of development, over time. Like I said, because I've been watching your channel and learning from your videos. Almost, it must be like pretty close to the beginning, because I remember the different changes of background, for example, and
Right.
how it just over time it started to look better, and it was just it was all coming together over time until we get to where you are now. Just switch to a single view and you can see the full extent of your backdrop there.
Well, right now you're not seeing it beautifully because the camera that I'm using is my internal camera of my monitor. So just to keep it simple. But it's funny that you say that, because I remember starting on recording on an internal webcam of a $250 to $300 laptop that I bought from a place that is not even, I don't know, licensed or anything. I bought from somewhere. I don't even have the bill for it. The model was different. The hardware was replaced. Some kind of shady laptop, $250 to $300 laptop. And I was in Mumbai for college, and it was on a very, very small apartment because, Mumbai is very expensive. And I was renting that. And the apartment was so small that if I sleep, my legs would touch the other wall. So somehow you could see the water tank in the background in that apartment. So that was the kind of, but I was always very concerned about audio. So even with that laptop setup, I used to definitely connect a nice USB microphone just to make sure that my audio is good. So that is one thing that I always wanted to make sure, because I know audio quality matters more on at least on instructional videos than what the face you see.
I also remember the first time I saw the keyboard appear behind. Did you play?
Yeah, there is the keyboard. Yes, I play that. That is kind of a hobby. I'm not professionally trained. That is also something I learned with trial and error, with a little bit of learning here and there, but mostly it has been trial and error. I still don't know how to read music, but I can play by ear. So that is something I enjoy. The reason why it is at the back is because when I'm working and I need a little break, that is my break.
There's I can't remember the name of the director. I remember watching behind the scenes. I think it was Rodriguez or something. I can't remember. But basically, I remember this behind the scenes scene where he was editing. It's editing station. He was editing his movie, and then in the background was basically the exact same setup, but for music with a keyboard and everything else. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. When you do a few hours of editing and you get bored of that, you just swing around in your swivel chair, play some music, record some music, swing back around, edit some video.
I'm not the only one. I thought I was the only weird one to do that. So to play keyboard on a swing chair. So that is something I thought I was weird about it. But yeah, glad that you told me.
Yeah. Music and I think music and visual arts, whether that may be photography or video, it really goes together really well. I think it's really not a giant leap in terms of sort of creative thinking at all, actually. Between the two things.
Right. I've done a ton of embarrassing things with music as well. So before we have all done it. All of us who have got into a little bit of music have done the embarrassing thing in our teenage years. And I'm not sure about you, but the people I know, all of us have done it. Before doing YouTube videos on Photoshop, I also had YouTube videos done probably 13 years ago or something, where I used to make music videos on YouTube. Thankfully, most of those videos are now private and only I can see it. And I've hidden all of those videos. They are so darn embarrassing. I used to use auto-tune and all that kind of funk stuff. I wanted to sound like T-Pain, and I don't want to even talk about it. That is some embarrassing stuff I've done back then.
Yeah, we've all done very embarrassing things. I know there are certain embarrassing guitar-related videos of myself still swirling around on the internet, I'm pretty sure. But, what can you do?
Yeah, that's how you learn. I mean, that has to be the beginning, of trying out, testing waters, and figuring things out.
Exactly. It's part of your history and part of your DNA,
But it does make you who you are today, and whatever skills you have today, they have some contribution to it. Definitely, actually, they have a big contribution to it.
Yeah, exactly, and it's exactly with making music videos.
Right.
I mean, now you're making videos about Photoshop, but actually, the whole idea of making videos was already born way before that, and that's a skill set
Absolutely.
that you can then take on to the next thing. Because let's face it, if AI replaces everything we know about Photoshop today, then maybe in 10 years' time we're going to have to do something completely different. Who knows?
Right. Maybe some music videos, human HI music videos.
Yes, exactly.
That is the only option. And by the way, since you were talking about it, because I recorded music videos, did music videos, also used to do this, used to learn. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I don't know why people hate this. A lot of people hate FL Studio, if you know what that is.
Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah. So I used to make beats in FL Studio and used to combine them used to use stuff like Cubase and software like that, and used to create some beats, some nice, and used to sing songs over that. And sometimes I used to even create remixes. So that was cringy then, but a part of it came through right now when I edit my videos and I add some music. Music is something that I really like to add, not in a way that it's distracting, but in a way that makes the experience nicer. So I know whenever I download licensed music from websites like Epidemic Sound or other website, they have the feature where you can get different tracks, not just the entire mixed track, but different ones. Like here's the drum
stems,
track, here's different stems. Exactly, that is the phrase. So I love to edit that way. Not a lot of editors know how to do this, especially when they're starting out. But since I had that cringy background, I have an idea on how to work with that. Like when I'm speaking, I maybe want to remove the drum tracks so that it's not distracting. Or maybe when the intro is going, you bring all the tracks back on, you turn everything back on. So stuff like that really helps me to the day. So it's all like connecting the dots. You did something that was embarrassing back then. You did something else that was embarrassing back at some other time. And you did something at some other time which completely doesn't make sense. But what you do right now, or maybe what you do in the future, everything just connects. Everything just starts to make sense of why you did what you did.
Exactly. And that just brings us back to, talking about creativity in general, because I think, you're, as a creative person, you're really a sum of all of the creative input that you've thrown into this bucket, mixed it all up, and then, what comes out in the end is your own creative DNA or ID or whatever you want to call it. And that is what makes you. And you're talking about, using stems and editing video, editing audio, including music to your videos. That really, really makes you unique among a lot of other content creators who would not necessarily go into that amount of detail to add music to their videos, for example. And so, and if that way of working, because some people might say, "Oh, wow, that just takes a lot of time. What's the point of that?" But the point is that, of course, working that way and creating those results gives you the creative satisfaction that makes you. Somebody else can do another thing.
And a lot of things with creativity is that a lot of people want to come to YouTube. A lot of people want to be social media influencers. And I believe that a thing that, again, I'm not doing best right. I'm not doing my best right now, because I believe that there is a lot of attention that is going more towards short form videos, and people are not as retained as they used to be in the kind of long form videos that I create. Because even I notice myself doom scrolling reels sometimes, and I am guilty of that too. So I notice my pattern as a viewer, because earlier I remember when I opened my computer, I went to YouTube and actually really took the time to patiently watch videos that other creators have created. I used to appreciate that, and I still do. But with reels and shorts, a lot of that attention is kind of going towards that. And I believe that is not, that is driving a lot of attention away from my content, but I still do it. I do it because I love what I do. And that's just keeps you consistent. And that's just, somebody asked me the other day, like, you are doing this for so many years. I've seen a lot of other people, create content and they don't create content anymore. Now, what is the secret? And there is no secret really. And if you look at most of my videos, none of them, most of them didn't go viral. It has been a very, very steady video creation, and people have watched very steadily, and they had looked for content on Photoshop and they find some of my videos. It has been a very steady journey. And the secret, there is no secret. And the reason of me doing this till now is because I love it. And just because I love it, and that's why I can be consistent about it. That's all. What I was saying is that a lot of people get into social media with a different agenda. They do it because they want to make money, and that is fine. I'm not saying that is something ethically wrong or morally wrong, but I believe that there is so much to gain if you do it because you love it. Just as you were talking about adding stems to my video editing, barely anybody would notice, or barely somebody would you notice the little things I do just at the intro of the video to add some music. But then again, I do it not because other people will enjoy it, but because I love doing that. And I want it to be perfect. I want it to be in a way that I can enjoy my own content. If I should be satisfied with what I create, that is all. And if you're satisfied, that's all it takes to, maintain that consistency.
And that's, you've really virtually verbatim repeated what I've been talking about on this show several times. Only recently, when I had this discussion with some of my friends, we did an episode about what it's like to run a photography podcast. For those of you listening, if you're still listening at this point, I have to say, thumbs up, mega respect. That's exactly the kind of devotion we're talking about. But so we did an episode with Steve Brazel and Dave Clayton from He Shoots, He Draws, and
I know Dave Clayton. Yes, he's a wonderful
yes, of course, absolutely, a very good friend of mine. And we were talking about the ins and outs of running a podcast like this and what it takes and the trials and tribulations and all the stuff that you do that people may or may not realize and why we're doing it and all the rest of it. And really, we really came to the exact same conclusion. It's, you end up doing it. If you're doing it for the right reasons, then it's not a burden. It's not like, I mean, anybody that I think I said this in that show is, anybody who expects to go viral after 10 podcast episodes really needs to go and do something else, because it's really not going to happen. Some episodes perform really well, others don't. And, whatever. I just love the conversation. That's why I'm doing it. There's nothing better for me than to spend time and have a great conversation with somebody who I really admire, like yourself. Other people go and play football. Some people go to the pub and have a drink. Fine. This is what I like doing, which is why I do it every week. It's just like you said, exactly. It's that consistency is not difficult if you enjoy what you do.
That is all there is to it.
That's it. There's no secret. There's no secret to online success. It's just that's.
And even if you do get, like you said, viral in the first 10 podcasts or in the first video, I believe again, this is what I believe at the moment, that it is bad for you. Because if you look at people who created one video or two video and went viral, most of them don't create content anymore after a year or so, because it came easy to them. And once it comes easy, you don't really value that. You don't really value that dedication. If something you create on the first or second video and it suddenly goes viral, it's not really good for you. Everything that instantly goes up definitely comes down, unless you take the time to put in the work into it, and you also take the time to put in that work consistently, not just over the course of months, but really over the course of years and years and years of work.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I can see the other side too, where you may be creating video after video or a podcast episode after podcast episode, and then you have 50 episodes in or 50 videos in and you're 100 videos in or whatever. And, and nothing seems to change. It seems like, nothing is moving. Like in terms of podcasts, it might be that, your listenership isn't going up or your downloads aren't going up significantly, whatever. And I can see how that could be frustrating to some people, and they go like, oh, well, it's like, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? And I think that's actually asking the right question. Why am I doing this? And who am I doing this for? Unless you're doing it because you love it, and you're doing it for yourself because you love it, then you're going to have a problem. Because if you're doing it for an audience that's not there, then that can only be frustrating. That can never not be frustrating. That's the thing. So I do believe that, as you mentioned earlier, your consistency is key. If you keep creating it, people will start listening to it, they will start watching. That's a great byproduct. But, if you don't...
Sometimes we watch videos for people's opinions. And, for example, a lot of us like watching camera reviews, right? A lot of us like watching certain things. Some of us I like watching motorcycle reviews. We have our tastes, right? Let's say a new camera comes out and we're looking for the reviews of it. Let's say, I don't know, Sony, Nikon, Canon, however you pronounce those brands. There's a debate of that as well. I don't know. People are just so debatey these days. Anyway, the point is, anytime a new gadget comes out, we are looking for reviews. We are looking for how it is. We are looking for what are the new features and stuff like that. We are looking to see whether it can help me or not, whether I would want to buy that or not. And as we are doing that, we are looking for different opinions. We are looking for, let's say, all right, what does, this creator has to say about this? What does that creator has to say about this? What does this creator has to say about this? We have our own personalities. And if an AI was to create a video, it wouldn't have, again, coming back to the very first thing that we talked about, it wouldn't have that personality. I want to know, for example, what this particular creator thinks about it. I want to know what is the opinion of the Camera Shake podcast on this particular device, right? Because you have an identity of yourself, right? So with videos that we create on social media, we all have built our identities. If Adobe comes out with a new feature, somebody would want to know, all right, What does Unmesh think about it? Is he critical about it? Does he really like it? Does he not like it? Or like some of your previous guests, what do they think about it? Do they like it? Do they think it is bad? Do they think it is good? So we are all about, developing our own personalities online, and we are just our individual people. And creators go there just to listen to that particular personality and that opinion. So you should definitely always have an opinion, a voice of yourself, which makes you uniquely you.
And very often that is something that's made up of a number of other opinions that we take on board. I mean, that's usually
right.
I think that's how we form our own opinions, so by listening to a number of different people. And of course, if that's somebody who we respect or whose opinion or expertise we respect, then we put more gravitas on those opinions in particular. For instance, like I think probably if I listen to an opinion of yourself about a particular Photoshop tool, I would probably put more importance to that than whatever my mum says. Since she doesn't know anything about Photoshop. There you go.
And it doesn't hurt to have an opinion that is strong. For example, one of my most controversial strong opinion is that levels is crap. Don't use levels. Use curves. And I would back that down. I would even have, if I have to take it to court, I will take it to court. So that was just a fun example, just to know that you have to have your own opinions. You have to have your own sides. And I'm not saying taking sides, but have your own opinion. That just really builds you. And it's not that everybody has to agree with you. I always say if something is working for you that I don't like, that's perfectly fine. That is the best tool for you. This is my opinion, and this is what my recommendation is. So people come to you for your opinion of what you think about it. And that is what, makes you stand out as any kind of creator, whether it's an artist who paints, or whether it's a creator who talks about stuff, or whether it's a podcast, or whatever that is. For example, my mother has a specific style that she has in her paintings. Maybe she has a style that uses a lot of ultramarine blue. She does a lot of paintings with that. So that is her style. In a way that you can say that is kind of her personality with the work that she creates. So that is what makes you stand out, and that is what kind of AI cannot take away from you, and that is your unique personality. It can steal it, but that's what it can do. It can just steal it. It cannot stand for it.
And on those magnificent words, thank you so much for being on the show today and being the guest of the Camera Shake podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Unmesh, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to say that I had a blast. I had a blast having this conversation with you. And I think it has been a while since we talked about what is AI, what has to come in terms of a general conversation. Instead of just having opinions about, all right, this is that feature, this is good, that is bad. But just a general conversation of what it is, where this is going, and what are our opinions on that. So definitely enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, folks, that's it for today. It was awesome having Unmesh on the show. And as always, before we go, let me just recommend another episode that I think you'll like. Check out episode 198 with Scott Kelby. I'm sure you'll love it. If you enjoy our content, consider supporting us on buymeacoffee.com/camerashake to help us continue creating and bringing you more exciting episodes. It really does mean the world to us. And for those of you who are listening to the audio version of this podcast, did you know that there's a fully fledged video version over on YouTube with plenty of examples of our guests' photography in full Technicolor? Well, you probably do know that because I harp on about it all the time. All you have to do is go over to YouTube, search for Camera Shake Podcast, and you'll be able to watch all past episodes on there. And if you're already on YouTube, drop us a comment, hit the like button, ring that bell, and share with your friends. Your engagement helps us reach a wider audience all over the world. So thank you for listening and watching. And remember, a new episode drops every Thursday, so make sure you mark that in your calendars. Until next time, keep shaking things up in the world of photography. See you next Thursday.